Experts have warned that forests remain Nigeria's most undervalued resource, and as long as planners and policymakers continue to disregard the economic importance of the forest sector, as well as those of sectors and activities that depend or impact it, so will forests continue to be degraded and lost, and their potentially vast economic opportunities will be lost.
The issue of RED Plus was looking at helping the local communities to preserve their forest, preserve their natural resources, such that it continued to absorb the carbon, thereby trying to balance the issue of climate change. But some people have also pickled and say a place like a country like Canada will continue to emit, or a country like US continue to emit, and you continue to conserve your forest. But you also agree with me that apart from the payments that countries will make for your trees that absorb carbon, there's also the ecosystem services such forests provides for you. Watershed. Averagely, when river runs through a forest, it purifies it more. Averagely, when there's a forest somewhere, it purifies the air more. Averagely, when a forest in a particular area, it reduces the heat around. So you have to look at also the ecosystem services such things provide, not just looking at the tax that the civilized country or the industrialized country of the world is also paying. And don't forget, they also have investment in Africa, which some of this climate change, this RED Plus thing will actually help you to address. If you have a big industry that relies on a lot of water, let's say manufacturing, then whatever you're paying is actually helping to protect your investment in a way.
The question of who bears the cost, C4 recently did a study that looked at the fact that indeed local communities are bearing more of the cost for implementing RED Plus than was expected. However, we also need to look at the other side of the equation, which is who's benefiting. RED Plus has at its core a climate change mitigation objective. However, it's also mandated through the UNFCCC to deliver multiple benefits. That means that every time UNEP or any of the other UN RED partners looks at supporting a country in RED Plus investments, we look at how it can benefit local communities, how it can benefit biodiversity, and how it can create livelihoods. At the heart of the UN RED program is FPIC, free, prior, and informed consent, which means that no action will take place using UN RED money without the explicit permission of the local and indigenous communities who are affected by it. So yes, we are seeing local communities bearing higher costs than expected, but we're also seeing local communities benefiting from the actions that we're taking.
Experts have conversed for more efforts to combat degradation of forests, which will in turn protect the wildlife and Nigeria's biodiversity.
In 1985, Nigeria came up with the Endangered Act, which is like a domestication of the Convention on CITES, and CITES is a convention on illegal trade in endangered species of flora and fauna. And the regulation Nigeria came up with in 2011 is to do like also reinforcing the implementation of the act. In addition to where there's some progress going on now, we realize that not just on this area, there is need to make the laws more stringent in the sense of the penalty. A gentleman mentioned about 200 naira in the law, but what is going on now is where all the laws will put a value to the sanction and say minimum. So it becomes the responsibility of the judge, according to the gravity of the offense, to put a value to it.
The Minister of Environment has expressed federal government's commitment to saving the country's wildlife from extinction and empowering communities whose livelihoods depend on wildlife resources. The minister said wildlife exploitation, illicit trade, and habitat fragmentation are the key threat to biodiversity as they concern thousands of plants and animal species and can lead to extinction if not properly addressed. Hence, the United Nations General Assembly's resolution designated the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora Secretariat as an instrument for monitoring illegal trade in wildlife species. The minister also said that the ministry, being the focal point of implementation, has domesticated the Endangered Species Act Convention to conserve wild species that are almost driven into extinction due to overexploitation, habitat change, and illicit trafficking. Environmental experts say the pressure for ivory as a result of the demand from parts of Asia should be curbed so as to discourage hunting and indiscriminate poaching, which have led to the decline of wildlife population, including elephants and rhinos. Many believe Nigeria could play a vital role in saving the continent's most precious natural resources, including wildlife, if the government would enact and implement more stringent penalties for wildlife trafficking that will help dissuade potential traffickers from using Nigeria as a transit point.
Wildlife trafficking has complicated efforts to protect endangered species. Pressure for ivory due to demand from Asia has led to the decimation of African elephants, and trade in vulture parts for traditional medicine is a major factor responsible for their drastic decline in Nigeria. The Federal Ministry of Environment has just completed a review of the Endangered Species Act and is working on an action plan to address the illegal ivory trade. To ensure that the war on wildlife trade is won, NCF has been building collaboration with local and international partners to form a network to prevent Nigeria being used as a wildlife traffic transit route. To this end, the Wildlife Trade Monitoring Network, Traffic, has opened discussion with NCF on ways to ensure success. According to the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora CITES, Nigeria is one of the countries of secondary concern with regards to illegal ivory trade, mainly featuring as a transit rather than a source country, even though transit countries also play very important roles.
Environmental experts have appealed to governments at various levels to adopt policies that promote the sustainable management of forests and wildlife resources to conserve biodiversity and enhance socio-economic growth.
There is one key thing which is missing in the puzzle and which is extremely important. We simply do not just know enough about our land. So, the investor flock in, with all the best intention to do what is good for both their investment and the country, but you go to this government ministry and you don't just have the data on land use on what is where. And even in countries where people have started to address this issue, they are isolated and they are not centralized in where whoever make the decision can actually access those data and say, look, you can't go here, you can go there. We don't just have this information.
Experts say only by adopting such policies would African countries achieve the targets set in the Sustainable Development Goals and address the challenges posed by climate change. They also say governments must ensure that forest lands are used in a way that conserves biodiversity and releases their full potential to fulfill ecological, economic, and social functions without damaging other ecosystems.